Welcome back to Moonkin Stitchery. My name is Crystal and today's video is part 3, the traditional lantern for my mini series called Lanterns. Lanterns is available as a free pattern on my website. The link for it will be down below in the description, but today I will be focusing on the traditional lantern. First off, you will need to print out the template. Please triple check your printer settings before printing. Make sure it is at a 100%. Do not scale to print. Most printers will try to scale the image before printing. Once printed, make sure that 1-inch square measures 1 inch with your quilt ruler, and next you'll want to carefully cut everything out on the exterior bold line. For the inside of the lantern and the handle area, you may want to use some smaller scissors. I've also already cut out the fabric requirements for the traditional lantern and then applied the heat and bond iron adhesive to the back side of the fabric. All of this will be written down in the free pattern below. You'll then trace the template onto the back of the fabric on the heat and bond side and then cut everything out again on fabric. Now I went ahead and traced the lantern shape out. I also did this for the yellow light source too. The orange light source does not have a template. It will stay in the rectangular shape, and the background fabric will not have heat and bond added. Once everything is traced, you're going to take your scissors and cut everything out again. But do take your time and try and be as precise as possible. Since this is a raw edge applique, your scissor work will for sure be visible in the final outcome of this mini quilt. Once everything is cut out, I went ahead and moved to my ironing board. I went and placed the background fabric down but right side up. You'll want to fold the background fabric hot dog style and just give it a good finger press. Do not use an iron to press it because you don't want to create a harsh fold line. And then you're going to start taking all the heat and bond paper off of the back of the lantern and both yellow and orange light sources. Then for the lantern piece, you're going to place it down in the center as best as possible. Then you're going to take the orange light source and slide it under the lantern. And if you have any orange bits sticking out of the exterior part of the lantern, just take some fabric scissors and trim small pieces off bit by bit. Once you have the orange light source set in place, it is now time to add the yellow light source on top of the orange but behind the lantern. Now do your best to center everything as possible, and once you're satisfied with everything where it's at, just take your iron and give it a good press. Make sure to melt the heat and bond adhesive really good and nice and down because you want everything to stick to that background. Once ironed down, this next step is optional if you prefer, but you can go ahead and stitch down the edges of your applique either by using a sewing machine, or you can hand stitch if you prefer. Now for the demonstration purposes, I went ahead and did so with a sewing machine. You can use some of the fancy creative stitches your machine has to offer. I went ahead with a simple straight stitch about 1/8-ish from the edge, and also for the insides as well. Now lastly, I did do a thread color change and did a simple straight stitch again about 1/8 from the edge for the yellow light source. Before I take the mini quilt to my Longarm machine, I wanted to use the fabric erasable marker, and I am using the highlighter version from the friction pins that will remove with heat. My goal for the background quilting is to kind of mimic a light source, like the light is on and it's shining through. And first I want to divide the light in half, and then at the top of the light in the lantern, I will draw a straight line across. I've now created 4 quadrants, and then I went ahead and used the 45-degree line on the ruler. Then I lined the ruler at the bottom of the fabric and slid it over until it hit the middle point of the top of the light. And I just repeated these steps all around in each quadrant. And lastly, between each 45-degree line that I just made, I'm going to eyeball what seems like half the size and draw another line. That way I can divide it into more and smaller portions. Then I went back and used the fabric marker to mark every other section so I'll know which areas to fill in when I'm quilting it out. Now you of course can do the quilting on a domestic sewing machine, but I prefer to use my long arm. It's more comfortable for me. So at the long arm, I'm going to start by basting down the edges of the mini quilt. And then in no particular order, I am going to be using a straight edge ruler and first outline the outer area that I want to fill in. Then everything that I have colored in orange with the friction pin, I will be quilting some straight lines going back and forth just to fill in the area. Now you can go as close as each other as possible to make it more dense, or you can space it out a little bit more. Whichever you prefer, it will still kind of create that same look. But with all that said, I will make my way around the entire background, and then I will go back and fill in the area by the handle. Here I am going to be ironing down the areas where the friction pin was just to quickly get rid of some of the lines before I start moving on to quilting the lantern. For the lantern, I do want to subdivide it into sections. The top section, the handle, the sides, the center X area of the lantern, and lastly the base. To get started on the base, I first want to section it off, and I'll be creating a straight line, and then using the straight edge ruler, I will slowly make my way across to divide that section. And after I have divided that section, I am just going to quilt within the area while curving around the corners and just keep going back and forth within it. And I've decided I wanted to really pack in the lantern with dense quilting just so I can give this as much texture as possible. Once I have finished, I will then start working and making my way up the sides of the lantern, and then I'm going to subdivide the top portion next. I will once again be using a straight edge ruler and then repeat the same process like I did towards the bottom. After I have quilted this area, I will then travel down and start working on the sides. So I'm going to start on the right side, and I'll just move up and down slowly, making sure I stay within that section. Once I have done the right side, I'm just going to move up on the top portion to the left, and I'm going to start quilting the left side now. And I'm just going to keep going back and forth, traveling up and down, slowly making sure I stay within that section. Once I have finished the left side, I am now going to start working on the center X area of the lantern. Now I'm going to start at the top left and start quilting at a diagonal to the bottom right. And I'm going to keep going back and forth. And once I finish, I'm going to end up in the center of the next where the X's cross. Now from that center point, I'm only going to go from that area to the bottom left and fill in this area. I will not cross over that line because I want it to look like that was a solid piece and this is kind of like behind that area. So I'm going to quilt that in, and then I'm just going to work my way on the bottom and move to the right side and then up the right side, and now I'm at the top right area of the diagonal, and then I'm going to go ahead and quilt that area in back and forth. That way I never crossed technically that center point, and it will give it a look like that bar piece of the lantern is behind it. I don't know what to call that part, so I do apologize. But lastly, I will then work my way up to the top and subdivide again. I just will keep repeating this process until this mini quilt has fully come to life. Now, I have chose to leave the light source unquilted so that way the batting in between the layers will puff out in that section. And lastly, all you need to do is just add binding and you're done. I do hope you all enjoyed this mini quilt series. I went ahead and done 3 videos on this with the English lantern, modern lantern, and now this video, the traditional lantern. So I do hope you've liked all 3 projects. But if you could, please take a moment to like and subscribe to my channel. Hit that notification bell so you'll be notified for your next amazing project. That would be very appreciated. But thank you so much, and I do hope you all have a wonderful day.